They say that silence is golden, but in a hospital room at 3 in the morning, silence is heavy. It's a thick, suffocating weight that presses against your chest until you can't remember what it feels like to breathe easy. I sat there, in that uncomfortable plastic chair, watching the green line on the monitor dance up and down. Beep, beep, beep. That was the rhythm of my father's life. A man who, only 6 months ago, was shouting orders in a boardroom. A man who thought he was invincible, now reduced to a series of electronic pulses. I looked at his hands, the same hands that taught me how to tie my shoes, the same hands that shook on million-dollar deals. They were thin now, almost translucent. It's funny how we spend our entire lives building a fortress of stuff, titles, bank accounts, reputations, only to realize that at the end, the fortress is empty. I realized then that I didn't really know him. I knew his achievements. I knew his expectations of me. But the man, he had been too busy securing our future to actually live in our present. And now, the future had finally arrived, and it looked nothing like the brochures promised. He woke up around 4:15 a.m. The light from the hallway cast a long, sterile shadow across the bed. His voice was a thin rasp, a ghost of the booming baritone that used to command attention. He didn't ask about the company. He didn't ask if the Q4 projections were met, or if his successor was holding the line. He looked at me, truly looked at me, and whispered, "I spent 40 years chasing a horizon that didn't exist." I tried to give him the usual comforts. I told him he was a legend in the industry, that he had provided a life for us that most people only dream of. I talked about the house, the prestige, the legacy. He closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. "That's not a legacy, son," he said. "That's just paperwork. A legacy is the sound of your kids laughing in the backyard, and I can't remember the last time I stayed home long enough to hear it." He told me about a Tuesday 14 years ago, a simple Tuesday. He had a choice between a make-or-break dinner with a client or his grandson's first birthday. He chose the dinner. He couldn't even remember the client's name now, but he could feel the hole where that memory should have been. He spent the next hour talking about the illusion of urgency. That's what he called it. He described his life as a series of fires that he felt he was the only one capable of putting out. We all do it, don't we? We tell ourselves that the world will stop turning if we don't answer that email at 9 p.m. We convince our families, and more dangerously ourselves, that our sacrifice of time is a form of love. We say, "I'm doing this for you," while the people we love are actually starving for the one thing we refuse to give, our presence. My father told me that the most bitter pill to swallow wasn't the illness. It was the realization that he was replaceable. Within a week of his diagnosis, his firm had moved his files to a different floor. Within a month, someone else was sitting in his leather chair, making the same urgent calls. The business didn't skip a beat. The world kept spinning. The only place where his absence left a permanent, jagged hole was at our dinner table. He looked at the ceiling and said, "I traded the only thing that was truly mine, my time, for the applause of people who forgot my name the moment I couldn't produce for them anymore." The room grew colder as the sun began to hint at the horizon, but my father's focus only sharpened. "There are 3 lies that keep a man running until his heart gives out," he whispered. "The first is the lie of later. We tell ourselves we'll play with the kids later, we'll travel with our spouse later, we'll find our soul later. But later is a crowded graveyard of intentions. It is the place where dreams go to rot because we think time is a well that never runs dry." He coughed, a sound that rattled the monitors, then continued. "The second lie is the lie of enough. We think if we just get that one promotion, that one bonus, that one bigger house, we will finally have enough to be happy. But enough is a moving target. The more you have, the more the target shifts, until you're 80 years old and still hungry for more of what you never needed in the first place. And the third lie? The lie that our work is our identity. When you strip away the title on the business card, who are you? I realized too late that I was a stranger to myself because I had spent 50 years being a professional instead of being a human being. He reached out and grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly firm for a man so frail. "Look at me," he commanded. "I used to think that providing for you meant giving you a trust fund and a prestigious last name. I thought that as long as the bills were paid and the tuition was covered, I was a good father. But you don't remember the money, do you?" I shook my head. He was right. I didn't remember the expensive vacations or the luxury cars. What I remembered was the empty chair at my graduation. I remembered the way my mother's face would fall when the phone rang at 6 p.m. on a Friday, knowing it was him saying he'd be late. Again. "I bought you things to compensate for my absence," he sighed, letting go of my hand. "It was a bribe. I was paying you to forgive me for not being there. And the tragedy is, you can't buy back a single missed bedtime. You can't hire someone to take the memories you didn't make and stitch them into your heart." He talked about how we inherit the shadows of our parents. Because he was never there, I grew up thinking that success meant being gone. I was repeating his mistakes, chasing the same ghost, and he could see the cycle beginning in me. He wasn't just mourning his life, he was terrified for mine. "I want to give you a tool," my father said, his breathing becoming more shallow as the morning light filled the room. "I call it the 5-minute rule. Whenever you are faced with a choice to work late, to skip a family dinner, or to put off a dream, I want you to project yourself forward to this moment. Imagine you are lying in this bed, with only 5 minutes of breath left in your lungs. Then, ask yourself, in those final 5 minutes, will I care about the project I finished tonight? Or will I care about the look on my daughter's face when I walked through the door?" He gripped the bedsheets, his knuckles white. "If the answer is the latter, and it almost always is, then you walk away. You close the laptop. You leave the office. The world will try to convince you that your worth is measured by your output, but in the final 5 minutes, your worth is measured only by your input into the lives of others." He explained that we are all managers of a diminishing resource. Money can be earned back, influence can be regained, but a Tuesday afternoon with a 3-year-old? That is a non-renewable resource. Once it's gone forever. He made me promise right then, as the nurses began their morning rounds, that I would never sacrifice a forever memory for a temporary deadline. The nurses came in to adjust his pillows, their movements soft and practiced, but my father barely noticed them. He was watching the sun crest over the horizon, painting the sterile hospital walls in shades of gold and amber. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he whispered. "I've seen 10,000 sunrises, but I think this is the first one I've actually looked at." There was a profound peace in his eyes that I had never seen before, a peace that only comes when you finally stop fighting the truth. He told me that his greatest fear wasn't dying. It was the realization that he had waited until he was dying to start living. As the monitor's beat began to slow, he leaned in, and his voice became a final, urgent command. "Go home, son. Don't wait for the funeral to tell your wife she's your world. Don't wait for a heart attack to tell your brother you forgive him. The things you're waiting to do, they are the only things that actually matter." He squeezed my hand one last time, a silent passing of the torch. He wasn't just saying goodbye. He was giving me permission to be someone he never was. A man who was present, a man who was whole. As the light filled the room, the tension finally left his face, and for the first time in my life, I saw my father look truly, deeply free. I walked out of that hospital into a world that looked exactly the same, yet everything had changed. The cars were still rushing by, people were still checking their watches, and the city was humming with the same frantic energy. But I was seeing it through different eyes. I realized that most people are walking around in a trance, convinced that they are building a life, when in reality, they are just consuming their time. You're watching this right now, perhaps on a break from a job you hate, or laying in bed at night wondering if there's more to life than this. And I'm here to tell you, there is. But it doesn't come from a promotion. It doesn't come from a bigger paycheck. It comes from the courage to say no to the things that don't matter, so you can say yes to the things that do. Don't wait for a hospital room to be your wake-up call. Don't wait until your body is failing you to realize that your soul is hungry. You have the one thing my father would have given all his millions for. You have today. You have the next hour. You have the ability to go home, hug the people you love, and start living the life you've been putting off. My father's story ended in that room, but yours is still being written. The pen is in your hand. What are you going to write today? Because before you know it, the sun will set, and the only thing that will remain is the love you gave and the time you didn't waste.